following podcast is recorded and produced by Emerge, a media creators co-op, in affiliation with the network at bicbp-radio.com.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Next of Kin podcast. I'm your host, Rich, joined by my son, Christian. How are you doing today?
Good.
It is windy.
Yeah,
In the background,
I
the
can hear
mics
that,
might be
honestly.
picking up the wind of the outside
I
today.
just noticed that's just hitting the wall too.
It just,
But-
well, we're
there's a
right at-
window,
yeah.
I guess. I forgot there's a window there.
Yes.
All covered up and
Yeah, like if you
blocked
look
away.
at on the side end of that room, there's a window with the Merge logo. And basically, let me switch. You can kind of see it from this
Yeah, you
camera.
can see a little bit.
The Emerge logo kind of behind your head there. There's a window there, but it's all insulated, like it's covered with
Yeah,
foam
it's not doing
to
much
keep
today,
the sound. Well, today it's just the wind's just hitting the building.
Nope.
So yes, it's blowing all the sand around or something. I hate sand.
Shut up.
So okay.
All
All right. So
do
it
we
was the
got?
Super Bowl, which you and
We
I
love-
were
we
super
love the
excited
Super Bowl. I
about
watched all of it, obviously.
because we
Like,
love the American football.
We had the lamest Super Bowl day ever.
Yeah, we just didn't care.
We just
Like
did
it's
nothing.
funny because it was the highest rated Super Bowl of all time. I
Really,
saw the
like with
ratings.
viewers.
Yeah, like it
Oh,
was the
well,
highest
yeah, I
rated.
barely-
It
I
was
watched some of it.
113 million people watched the Super Bowl.
Well,
So it might not be the highest. It might have been the third highest. But Rihanna's performance, there was 118 people that watched the halftime show, supposedly, versus 113 million that watched.
the 5 million
whole-
extra people joined in.
5 million
just-
people joined in just to watch Rihanna
I'm
and
not
then turned it off,
surprised, yeah.
which is kind of funny if you think about it.
So Rihanna did it.
So Rihanna what has the high? So technically, right now, I think Rihanna has the highest rated non-Super Bowl program in television history in America. This is America only,
Interesting.
obviously, because obviously there's lots of.
No, she hasn't done a concert or
places,
even
so-
released an album for like 5 years or
Yes,
whatever.
good
so,
for you, Rihanna.
Sure. Man,
We're
she-
happy for you.
Yeah. Wasn't the best performance, but you
Well,
know.
she's pregnant,
Listen,
and like
it was
I don't
demonic.
think she should be.
It was a
jumping
demonic
around.
performance, Dad.
Oh,
Obviously, like that's why they were descending to Earth or something. I don't know.
Yes, I don't
Fucking.
know. There's so many funny things, so many
God
funny
damn it,
memes
people
that came out
are
of it.
tiresome.
But I don't know. Rihanna was like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't want to get into that."
Yeah,
'cause
I'm
it's
joking.
stupid.
I'm just fucking around.
All right. So, but more importantly, there were lots of cool trailers that came out during the Super Bowl.
Sure.
And then a lot of them were shorter, and then you had to
Yeah.
go online to see the full.
I mean, a lot of them were out before the Super Bowl.
Yeah, a
Even
lot of them.
so-
But I mean, I didn't know about any of them because,
Yeah.
to be honest, I've been
like the
busy.
Flash one was out like for like an hour or two before like it came out during the Super Bowl. So-
I worked like 6 days in a row, and I wasn't even around that much. So I wasn't even on I wasn't even on most social media or internet that much last week on purpose, kind of. But so we had the Flash trailer, we had the Guardians 3 trailer, we had Fast X, which I know we
Is it
can't wait
X
to
or
get
10?
to.
Is it 10?
It's X.
I don't think
Fast
it's X.
It's the Fast
I mean, it's the numeral
Xest.
X, but-
It's 10. Fast 10. The movie that everyone is dying to see.
Which we I don't know if this is a one-parter or a two-parter anymore.
I don't
I'm just gonna
remember.
I'm gonna let myself be surprised.
I
by the
just
movie.
kind of
I'm
like
gonna
would
let-
be surprised. We're gonna get to that.
We'll
one.
get to that one later.
And then, of course, we're going to talk about Bad Batch because it was a two-parter
yeah, if
last
we get
week.
to that, we always say that, but if we get to it,
And then we'll also, there's Last of Us. So, all right,
Yeah.
let's start with the one that everybody super seems to
Yeah,
get.
let's start with
This was
trailers.
probably the one that got the most the conversations on social media.
well,
which I
and it
think
is
was
like,
trendy.
and it is a lot. We've talked about it a fair bit as well with DC and the situation involving the individual. So,
Flash trailer.
yep.
The Flash,
Mm-hmm.
the movie that everybody wanted to see. Obviously, there's all kinds of turmoil with this movie. Let's not talk about that at all. But let's talk about just about. This looks really good, right?
Well, I think we should just we should address.
I don't want to get into that at all. We've already talked about that a bunch of times. Whether this movie is going to
I'm
be
saying that-
well received
I
or
think
not.
we
I just want to
yeah.
focus on the trailer and the fact the movie's finally got. We have a release date eventually, obviously, and that
Was it
what we
July?
thought.
There's a lot
about
of movies
the
that are going
trailer.
to cannibalize. This is
Yes.
the complete opposite. But a lot of movies are going to cannibalize each other in July. Like if you go look at all the movies that are coming out that month, it's It's a
My
little
argument
busy.
is, and I would argue that this is good for the movie industry because, in my mind, one of the criticisms is that the only thing that people go to the movies for is like Marvel movies or big Star Wars things or whatever it might be. Like and Maverick, Avatar 2, which hey, Avatar 2 update, we haven't gone yet. And Ant-Man comes out this week, so Avatar will no longer be the leading movie after this week, I predict, because Ant-Man's going to knock it down. And then that'll kind of, I think other things are coming out now, so to be honest, I think whatever Avatar was making, it's kind of maxed out for the most part. Mm-hmm. Besides, he's got Titanic coming out, so he's got to try to get, he wants his Titanic to beat Avatar, so it can just be 1 and 2 again. But whatever. No, so
all right, so we can talk about I'll address it at some point.
Okay,
but for now, we can just talk about the trailer.
All right, so for you,
which I think immediately I can see why it's not been canceled. Like I can see why they were like we can't. Wow, like someone said this a load bearing retcon. Like was what they called the movie.
Okay,
so like it was too good. Like to cancel, it seems like.
Okay.
Because other actors certainly have had or like maybe not even cancel, but obviously like I see why they haven't replaced Ezra, given that like they're playing multiple characters.
I think it would have been impossible.
Yeah, it seems like they're already too baked into the fabric of the movie already.
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
it would
let's
have
be
taken too
honest.
much money probably too.
Well, here's the thing, and this is my take on this. Like, obviously, there's all kinds of things going on with Ezra, and that's fine. And let those things work themselves out in the courts or whatever that is, or whatever.
I certainly think this trailer de-emphasizes like him a little bit,
right?
Like for the movie, like and a lot of the spotlight actually goes on to.
I don't know
like,
what you're supposed to
Batman.
do with this when there's hundreds and hundreds of other people who worked on this movie. Who it's not fair to those folks because they just went to work. Whether it's Michael Keaton or it's the Key Grip, those people worked on this movie, and some of them are not going to get paid based on the cost of blah blah blah.
I will say what's interesting
is this movie needs to be released because let us judge it, and if you don't like the situation, don't go. And then if it's good, people will say, you know what, I'll put it aside because I want to see this movie because I heard it's really good.
Well, I was like, for people that aren't going to see it, like, or I'm losing my train of thought entirely. Well, keep going for a second.
Okay, well,
I'm going
to talk about, like, I'm excited because, obviously when I was younger in the 80s, when I was in college, by the time when I was in high school, like the first superhero movie I ever saw was obviously Superman with Christopher Reeves, who was like, I loved Superman 1, I loved Superman 2, hated 3 and 4. And then they had a superhero movie in there with Slater.
For like Flash
like
fans,
but
I
then
don't think
Batman
the situation
came out,
should.
And Batman was the biggest movie in the world. So, and we loved Michael Keaton as Batman. Yeah. So for my generation, we're just thrilled to have the original Batman back.
And there's like and I understand that like people have been waiting for a Flash movie like for a very long time. So for that, and there other people have like worked on this movie besides like Ezra, like clearly. And like their work doesn't necessarily need to be like thrown out like because of that. Although I will say like one thing I had noticed is the Ezra situation seems to be one thing I was curious about was like how many people are actually like aware of like situations like that, because like that's a reality. Is not everyone is always like certain like times the like I don't know the general public is more often is more what I'm talking about is aware of like are they aware of like the allegations, or are they aware of what's going on behind the scenes? And more often than not, I say no, they're not. But like for this, it seems like everyone knows. Like everyone, like when I was watching reaction, people reacting to the trailer, nearly every reaction started off with like mentioning, like the stuff going on behind the scenes of the movie about Ezra. So like it seems to have permeated to like it's well known, and the fact that this has got as positive a response as it did, like it needed to. It needed to make an impression. Right. It needed to tell you immediately why, like, this movie, like, why we're doing this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it needed to win people over. Sure. Give like, at least some level of reasoning. I mean, if you don't think you should be in the movie, like, I don't know what's going to
Don't go.
If you're
Then
troubled
don't
by
go.
it, then you just don't
Don't
go.
go.
Then at
That's
that
that's
point,
why that's why American capitalism
Yeah.
or whatever capitalism is based on. You don't like the product because of its ties to whatever, and that's why there's boycotts and things
Yeah.
like that. Then don't go. And for me, I want to focus on the fact that I don't know anything about the situation besides what I read in the media. I'm not there. Obviously, there's a bunch of situations that are bad, and like I said, I'm just going to let the courts work those things out.
I will say though,
Whether it's this, whether it's the Johnny Depp thing,
Yeah.
whatever it is, like it's just, it is what it is. I'm going to focus on the fact that this is a movie that I'm interested in seeing.
And Gunn is like, even like Gunn,
you know-
Gunn is, this is the only film of like the four that he's inherited that like Gunn like talks up at all. Like Shazam, like this comes out like in a couple weeks or whatever, and like they've barely talked about Shazam. It barely has any like marketing. It's like,
can we get to the trailer?
you know what I mean?
Because
But
we've already
but
done
to
all
the
of
actual
this.
trailer though.
Let's get to
like,
the actual trailer now.
Just on a
Okay.
pure trailer, this is one of the best trailers I've probably seen like in a while. And there were some good trailers. I think the Guardians trailer is really good, and we're going to talk about that. And I think the Fast X trailer is actually like unironically like a really good too for like what it is.
Is it?
And
We'll
like
talk about
no,
that.
like
We'll
genuinely
get there.
like
We'll
for
get
what
there.
for like it fits like for the
It totally fits the
yeah,
franchise.
like it really fits like
Yes.
in the moment that the franchise is trying to like accomplish.
Flash
So-
trailer though.
But for this though, like this
Flash
on its
trailer.
like just on its own and just on the merits
Yeah.
of like what it's showing us, then like like this is a good trailer. Again, there's been
Right.
and we could see like a little bit of why I think because James Gunn said like this is one of the best comic book movies he's ever seen.
Okay.
He's like what he said.
Well, he has to say that.
He has to say that, but again,
'Cause
he
he
didn't
needs
say it
this
about.
movie
He
to do
didn't
well.
say it about Shazam, did he?
No, he didn't.
Like,
But he knows
didn't say it about
but
Blue
he doesn't want to
Beetle
get. He
or,
doesn't
like,
want to get caught.
Aquaman.
Well, because he knows they aren't. But he still could be there again. This movie's super important in terms of their minds. In terms of we already talked about this.
Well, they
of
need to rework
how
some
they're
things, but
resetting this whole franchise.
it's
whatever you
being
want to call it.
the
Right.
gimmick in it is being used for like a different
Right.
reasoning now because
Right.
of what's transpired behind the scenes.
All right, so obviously the trailer, I feel there's a lot of stuff in the trailer that's really from the first part of the movie because clearly we have
Well, the
Ben
first, like,
Affleck.
minute is, like, when-
We have Ben
yeah.
Affleck in this trailer as Batman. We clearly see General Zod, right? We see multiple Flashes. We see Supergirl. And obviously the most important thing for most of us is that we see Michael Keaton. Although I think the Supergirl reveal is pretty darn cool, too.
Yeah, I think people really like. I don't know, actually. Like,
So obviously...
I like. Well, this is obviously a take on the Flashpoint.
Yeah,
like,
talk
storyline.
about that a little bit, because obviously we've talked about Flashpoint on this podcast before, but you had some really cool comparisons about how the variations that they're doing. So go ahead on a couple of those.
Well, it's like the DC animated universe had a Flashpoint movie. It's
Yeah.
really pretty good actually.
Which is
You've
available on
seen it.
HBO Max, which is a very, very, very
Yeah,
good
it's
movie.
not as good as the comic, but it follows like the comic it's based on like pretty well. And this is like very like there are very clear things within like this trailer alone that are like, oh, okay, like they're just doing like a version of that. Although I would say they're doing a version that like kind of almost fits, like they're doing almost like a Snyderverse like Flashpoint, because they have like Zod there.
I think that's a good
And then
point.
there's-
That's a good way of taking
It's
it.
like
Yep.
Batflex there, like so it's like almost like it's. They might try to treat it as almost like the culmination of like that universe.
I think that's what it is,
And some
even
of
if it's
those
been
storylines,
changed subtly
like-
from what it
even
was
even
originally.
at first, Cavill and Wonder Woman were supposed to also have like cameos in this.
I still think we're
there's
gonna have
different
some
reports
cameos.
that's people have been cut or whatnot.
Yeah.
We'll see like what has been and has
I
not
think
by
there's
the
going to
time
be
it's
some
over, but-
cameos because I think in Flashpoint, if you think about it, the way the animated one starts off, they're on a mission, and then Flash basically wants to go back in time so he can save his mom, which is kind of, I think, going to be a theme, obviously.
Yeah.
I know that's going to be a theme.
Because I don't think Batfleck's going to be a huge part of this movie. Like, I think we actually got, like, a lot of what the Batfleck we saw was, like, probably most of the scenes he was in the movie.
I think there's going to be a
Like-
mission at the beginning of the movie.
Like, I think, like, the thing, because they do a little bit of, like, trailer trickery where there's that one shot of, like, where it looks like Batman's, like, in the battle at the end or whatever, but he's
Right.
not. Like,
Right.
it's totally just, like, they cut to something else.
Well, we
which
saw the
seems to be his
Batman-
thing from the beginning, which I imagine is just,
Yeah.
like, a Batman like Flash, almost like Justice League
we saw
team up mission.
Batfleck. You know, we see Batfleck, and we see him like in that bluish gray suit, which is really cool looking, comic accurate.
Yeah, which is supposed to be like more inherent, like Batman's. So, like he's fighting in the daylight. Like he's more like that's supposed to symbolize a bit more of like open hero,
right?
Less vigilante, like Batman, if that makes sense. Which is like which works for like Affleck's like. Arc is the character,
right.
However weird it is.
And it's funny because everybody was freaking out because there's a motorcycle, there's a Batcycle.
And it looks like
it looks a lot like the Christian Bale.
It does look like the Christian Bale.
It's not, though.
It's not.
I mean, they kind of confirmed.
I imagine
it's
just like it's it looks like that to almost pay homage to it almost. So.
And then that, I would agree with that. And then there's definitely a scene where Ben Affleck is talking to Batman's talking to the Flash, and he's telling him the consequences if he goes back in time. Because obviously he's been able to do that already, and Batman knows that he could do it. So I think that's what them, and then that's how the movie obviously
they're changing it a bit though, because obviously the two main, well, like one Cyborg's a bigger character in like the Flashpoint like storyline, and he's like a Secretary of like Defense, and there's like a bigger like, but again they're changing like the big like global like, instead of like in Flashpoint like the storyline where it's like this. His going back in time causes essentially like a Themyscira versus Atlantean war, and that's good. And that almost like consumes the planet. It leads to like the end of the world almost.
Right.
Like in this, it's Zod. They're using the Zod thing from Man of Steel as that like same.
Yeah, it feels like there's some footage right out of like Man of Steel that's being reused.
Yeah, so like that's a change. Otherwise, the other change is when he goes back in time, which like the big twist in Flashpoint is like.
Well, clearly,
Reverse Flash is the villain of Flashpoint in a way, but for most of the story, you think that he caused all this somehow. But at the end, you learn no, Flash went back, and his selfishness caused all this.
Yeah.
And then he has to go and set it back. He has to stop himself and like almost grow. He has to grow and move on from his mom's death. Like that's the storyline.
And in Flashpoint, the Zoom is just. Reverse Flash is happy.
He's just there because he has the Speed Force, so he's laughing. He's like the Joker
and he's
almost.
happy for the universe to disintegrate.
Yeah, he's fine with it.
The world sucks.
Like, he just hates Flash that much. He's more than happy to.
So
like,
it's kind of a neat thing. And obviously, instead in this one, we're going to
and then some of his other
I think we're going to get an evil Flash. I think there's going to be like that other Flash that clearly we've seen.
Well, yeah, that's they're doing a different thing because obviously I think Reverse Flash. You can't like just reveal Reverse Flash to us in Flashpoint, like for the first time. Like it doesn't work.
That wouldn't make any sense.
But so what they've done is seemingly instead of Flashpoint, where when Barry goes back and changes things, like he just loses his powers and he just like gets set up in.
Well, he never got his powers.
He never ends up getting his powers.
In the trailer, he says, "I created a world
where there's no metahumans."
Where there's no metahumans.
And no, I'm talking about the original one now. Though.
Yeah,
I'm talking about in that one he goes back, but he replaces like he is the Barry. This one there's two Barrys, so it's almost like he's from the old timeline, but the timeline he created still has a Barry, so he's just what's left over almost, and he needs to get so like there's two. So instead of replacing and then being like almost the only one that remembers, there's another Barry that doesn't remember anything because they're part of this world.
Right.
And I imagine, and then I think there's going to be more than the two Barrys that we have.
Right.
Because I don't even think one of the two Barrys we've seen. I guess they could twist it and have one of them be the Dark Barry, like all along. But like,
I guess we'll have to wait and see.
I don't know. But
other big things, obviously, is in Flashpoint they're looking for a Superman, and the Superman that they find
teams up with
in that alternative Flashpoint movie in the animated one. The Superman has basically been like kept in a cave.
Well, he just gets captured immediately by the U.S. government. I think essentially is what it is. And that's like the two biggest allies that he recruits, like in Flashpoint, like the comic, are like he goes against Batman, although it's not Bruce Wayne.
Well, let's focus on the Superman first. We'll get to the Batman.
And then
do the Superman version first.
I mean, we're going out of order a little bit.
We'll do the Superman version first because we see her as much as we see her. She's definitely in it. So in this one, it looks like they're introducing Supergirl
instead of them. It seemingly being, which also is a weird thing that I totally forgot about in Man of Steel. In the bigger ship that he finds, I think there's a hole in that side of that ship that like people have always thought was like a reference to like Supergirl being in the ship and then like getting out of there.
Oh, and escaping.
From like, all the way back in Man of Steel. So if she's like from that ship almost and like and they got her out of that ship like immediately, because obviously what the big change they're doing, the twist on the storyline is instead of doing like emaciated no sun Superman because they just keep him under red light essentially and they find him like he's I don't even know how long he's been there for like in
Years.
the years and years and years decades
Maybe his whole life.
and in this they've switched it out with Kara with the Supergirl.
Yeah, because at one point
really
he's
fits
like,
the role.
they
like,
show
she looks
up.
good in the role.
Well, it's a really cool way that they did it. They
Not
show
blonde
up
Supergirl,
and there's
too.
a little interaction in the trailer where he says like it's not you're not what's
it's
the
not Clark.
not Kal-El. It's
not Clark.
Yeah, it's like you're not Clark, and then. And then, so it's an alternate, and it's a cool thing because she's almost in that white kind of thing. And
She
then,
might be Zod's daughter,
then we
too.
actually seeing her in her cool, Supergirl suit is really nice.
Yeah, I like her Supergirl suit. I even like that the hair works. I know it's not the traditional like blonde like Supergirl, but
Like
I
the Helen
like when
Slater
Supergirl
one,
and like Superman aren't just like the same version of the character,
Right.
Like which happens a lot.
Right.
Like where they're like I hate the CW version of Supergirl. I like when we have a little bit different, where like she's a little bit more jaded or a little bit like not just like the all American.
And there are versions
like,
in comics
positivity.
that you and I have talked about that are like that are definitely those things.
And that's what almost
And
like
I
the
think
blonde
that's what
hair
they're
like
gonna go for
harkens
here.
to, and
Yeah.
like you know what I mean. Like that's what that look in like the skirt. That's all supposed to harken.
I don't
to.
know.
I
if,
like this better
because
like,
obviously you've talked about it.
Yeah.
There's a version of Supergirl where she lived on a
And that's the one
chunk
they're-
of
and that's the one they're making,
Krypton,
and-
and we don't know if it's that. We don't know if it's going to be tied back to Man of Steel.
Well, that's the movie that
where
we know
she's-
they're making,
yeah,
like
right.
for the new DCU. And I don't know if like they picked that Supergirl because that story was so good. I don't know if like James Gunn saw this and was like, "Oh, we have a really good Supergirl that people are gonna like in this new Flash movie coming up. Let's give her like even more." And I remember her like that when that actress got announced. Like, there's a video out there somewhere of her like being very, very, very excited for getting like announced to the role. So
Well, let's finish up on Supergirl for a second. But
Yeah.
So let's assume for a moment that this is the girl they're going to use for that Supergirl movie, because of whatever's going to get reset in this movie.
Yeah.
And James Gunn's talk about how he resets the universe or whatever in this movie. We still don't know what that means exactly, but you could take it as one of two things: that this Supergirl. This like because this is time is going to end up getting changed.
yeah.
Or this is a different Earth if he's visiting other Earths to find help.
Yeah.
We don't know if this is a Supergirl from a different Earth or a different alternative
It could
timeline.
even be like Zod's daughter, Supergirl,
but
which
it
is
could
a
be
thing
the
too.
actress.
Like,
it could be
like
Zod's daughter.
that's a Supergirl on
Yeah.
in some iterations too, from what I've read.
But they
so.
could just say we're going to use this actress and just put her in a different movie and just reset
Especially
the
'cause she has
story.
the black hair, too,
Yeah,
so
but
I'm
they
like-
could just do the same actress. If
No,
the
I agree,
actress
yeah.
is- and the movie may have
No,
nothing.
if she's
to
liked
do.
in this, I have almost no
yeah.
doubt that she'll be
Yeah.
cast as the Supergirl.
But now let's
actress
get
next
to
time.
it. Let's get to
And she
the
looks
most
young
important
too.
part.
Like she looks
Yeah.
rather young. Like so.
Now let's get to what everybody's really talking about, what
Ezra
everybody's
Miller's
excited
second
about.
Flash. The
Yeah,
second,
that's it.
the second one.
So
The younger version of. Although I do like that they have the both color. We'll do Flash really quickly.
All right,
we'll
go
do. I do like the two different color Lightning Flash because people
Yes.
didn't like the blue Lightning in the DC stuff. So for whatever reason,
Oh.
so I like how they have like in the new universe like because I don't know if he's going to have his powers like
one of them will not have powers.
I think the one doesn't have powers and the one does, right? Is that what we think, or do they both
I think
not
the
have
one that
powers?
when he finds himself, that one will not have powers because
obviously
he never had the metahuman accident.
Because one of the moments in Flashpoint is like he goes and finds Batman, which we'll get to, and he recreates the experiment that gives him his powers, so he can
maybe he's
give
gonna
himself
recreate
the
the
Speed
experience
Force.
to give
So
him
I don't know if
the other version of himself
exactly.
powers.
So I think so. Either way, the past one, the one with longer hair, which seems to be 2013 Barry almost.
Yes.
That one, like, definitely doesn't have powers. Like as far as I'm
But
concerned.
he's going to end up with powers.
And they're going
That's
to
why his
yeah,
suit's
they're
going
going to do that plot line
and
with
his
him.
lightning will be a different
Exactly.
color. Yes.
I just don't know if like our current Barry is going to have his powers maintained or not. Probably because he seems to be almost like left over from the last universe. So
I'm just wondering if there's any other heroes we're going to run into. I don't
I'm
think
sure
they're
there will
doing,
be. I'm sure they got a couple more surprises.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to have the like Kryptonians like battle versus the Aquaman versus
I don't know
like
if that's-
Amazon. I don't think we're going to get.
no, we're not.
like,
We're not getting that storyline.
No,
we're getting a
there's
different
gonna be,
iteration.
But I think there's going to be some variation.
it's very
of
much
it.
in this. It's just like a very MCU like adaptation actually, where the MCU always like picks a big comic storyline, like big iconic one, and then just kind of like molds it
Use
to
it
like
as
the
the basic
screen
model.
based on what their universe
But I
is
think
like.
there has to be
so.
something else in there too, though. That like that's why I think maybe if the Kryptonians are ruling the Earth, but But you got to remember, in Man of Steel,
I
like,
think that's
they
what
were
that flat ass
transforming
area-
the Earth.
That's what that flat plane is, I think. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think like a big area has already been transformed already.
Right.
So I think that area has already been like flat.
Maybe they stopped them later. And
Yeah, I think they're
now-
gonna go longer.
Yeah,
essentially,
like they were able to transform part of the Earth, so now there's Kryptonians on the Earth and they're ruling us. Like, who knows? We maybe he got the Codex. I got the Codex, and I ripped it from his DNA.
She is the Codex.
She
remember?
is the Codex.
It's
So
like-
yeah, like
or something.
I
don't know.
Can we just talk about that for a second? How what a great Zod that is.
Yeah, he's. Oh yeah,
and that voice of his that
and
he
I
has.
didn't. I don't know if I knew
love that
Zod was
voice.
coming back or not. Once I saw the screen flicker, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh shit, it's Man of Steel. It's Zod.
Yeah. Like,
Which I was surprised about because not everyone like.
and he's in a
Oh, I
ship
think Man
or
of Steel has
something,
aged
and,
better,
like-
and also people would like saw Zod and saw the Man of Steel stuff and were actually pretty like positive seeing it. So I think Man of Steel has aged better than people give it credit for.
I like Man of
So
Steel. I've always liked Man of Steel. It's not my favorite.
and
Superman
Zod's
movie,
really
but
good.
I
And
like
he's
it.
a very and
He's a
Shannon's a
good
great
bad guy.
Zod,
Yeah.
so he's a good villain.
I think they may reference
Yeah,
that.
I'm sure there's an
Kal-El
evil
was that
Flash
they
hiding
killed
somewhere
that,
as well,
That,
but-
that Superman may have been murdered, and they steal his.
Yeah, I don't know if he's dead or if he just never showed up or no, because that could be a, like part of
We'll have to see
the
how
thing
the
as well.
alternative
Like
one
it's all
goes.
about the time ripple, things change. Which brings us to the biggest one, which I don't know if like where we don't know where this fits yet.
Let's talk about
but-
Batman first, and then let's debate
Yeah.
which Batman this is.
No,
Like,
we know
how-
it's Keaton's Batman.
We know
but,
it's Keaton's Batman, but
but
why
did
is
he get
there?
shifted? Is he shifted to
Is
this
he a-
random Snyderverse like
let's talk
DCU
about
world,
what we
or
see
is he in like a
first.
subverse like somewhere else, like Multiverse of
about
Madness?
the cool shit first,
Yeah, you
and
can
then
go
we'll
into your-
theorize.
you can talk
so
about Keaton.
obviously it's 1989, and I'm like me and my friends. I'm in
Yeah.
college at this point. I'm not even. I think of my senior year of college,
Yeah.
going into my senior year of college, and everybody's like. You know, like there's a commercial, bum, 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 like the whole theme, which
Yeah,
is
the
really
theme is
freaking
good.
iconic.
The theme is so good.
They got Michael Keaton as the Batman, and you got Jack Nicholson as the Joker. Jack Nicholson as the Joker's freaking huge at the time. Michael Keaton, not so much.
Yeah.
Because Michael Keaton was a comedian. He was in funny things like Mr. Mom and, you know, like a movie about like Japanese taking over the Detroit car industry. And he did a great movie with like Henry Winkler called Night Shift. He was more comedic. He does a movie called Johnny Dangerously, like, which is a parody of 1940s gangster movies. He's a comedic actor. And all of a sudden, I'm Batman.
Yeah.
So,
He
but
probably
as
is,
soon-
he probably is
hold
the
on.
best Bruce Wayne
But
scene still.
once he's in that Joel Schumacher movie, everybody was it. Everybody, like, if it was social media back then, everybody was like, I'm okay with this now because he was so friggin' good. And
He has
Jack
the best Bruce
Nicholson's
Wayne
obviously
scene
good.
when like they're in his house
Yeah.
and he like breaks a glass or some shit. I forget what it is, but he starts yelling at like. but that's pretty good.
It's
but,
he's so
it
good
is,
in the movie.
and when he shows up in this trailer, it's really good
well,
as well.
obviously, his first thing
With the stupid little pointy
Yeah,
ears.
he's got the old. It's the same.
And he does the
It
line, and
looks
then
like
he jumps,
the same,
and then he
yeah,
jumps in,
yeah.
and they do like a modern
That's
version of like his
cut up.
act.
That's all cut up. It's not.
No, it's
in
all
that
CG,
same order.
but, like-
no, but the order of it
No,
in the trailer.
obviously.
But he says
But,
he walks in with that smirk.
But I'm just saying the
and
three
you
things
know
the
it's
three
coming.
things they show us,
You know
like,
it's
and
coming.
immediately
Like,
to him.
it's like what he used. It's the same look he had on his face
Yeah.
when he made a speech. He made a graduation speech at a college someplace. He's like, I only got like two things. I got two more words I want to say to you guys. I'm Batman. Like, and he does it in a speech, and he almost has the same freaking look on his face in the trailer with that little smirk.
He's like,
I'm
yeah.
Batman.
He alwast says it like tiredly.
And then we
like,
see the
it's just-
Batcave. He does that ridiculous dive, which
Yeah.
and every form of
And he does
physics.
a modern action
Yeah,
shit
like-
too, which is like great. Like he picks up the dude and like chucks him. It's like comic ass. Like
it's comic.
it's like
yeah,
Batman, like,
overpowered.
you know, like cape glide when
Yes,
Batman has like a
like-
cape
yeah.
and he like glides around like that
Right.
version of Batman.
Which
it's like
doesn't-
that, which doesn't make like the version of Batman that doesn't make any like sense to physics. He's
Right.
that version of Batman now,
Right.
where who just kind of like
And then-
vampire.
But
like
then
flies
Ezra, or
around.
whichever Flash that is, takes the cover off of the freaking
long-
Batmobile,
the Longmobile.
the 1989 Batmobile, which I still think is a great Batmobile
Yeah.
because it's so Joel Schumacher.
Yeah.
It's so like
It's so
over the top.
but-
It looks like something, a combination of modern tech for the 1980s.
That is kind of what the Bat-
with
Yeah.
like what the way it was drawn in the original comics.
It is what it is what the original
like that Art
comic
Deco.
one.
It's like an Art Deco Batmobile is what it is. Because everything in that everything in that Gotham is Art Deco.
Obviously, the minimalist, like really ultra militarized ones have like gotten really popular because people really like the Rumbler. I think it's what it's called from like the Dark Knight trilogy because that thing is like. But
it's a friggin'
But it also fits
Humvee.
the universe that it's set in so well of being like an actual like this is a thing that exists like that Batman bought and like developed.
Yeah,
like
that one's great. The Batman's Dodge Charger
that one's interesting
is so cool.
I like that
because
one.
it's so street level.
I mean, it's a little. It's very un-Batman-y because it's
don't
not.
care. No, but it wasn't Batman.
But it works for like
because
being
it's got
like
the
an early
engine on the
yeah.
back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's better than the TV show.
No, but at the end of the day, it
one.
is just like a challenger. Like it is just a challenger at the end of the day.
He's building it on the weekends in his garage.
No, but I'm
He's
saying
just building it in his garage.
it's like Batman Year 1 though. It's like Batman Year 2. Like he's early on. Like he doesn't maybe have like the most advanced like everything yet. He just has like a really souped up.
I think
like,
when we see
Charger
the Batmobile in the Batman, that's the first time anybody saw it.
Maybe
because he was working on it, and I think he just
see something like that.
I don't think he even had it before that. I think he was just riding around on a motorcycle before that.
Potentially, I think that I didn't think about that, but maybe
because it's uncovered, and I think they makes a reference to Alfred about him working on it or something like that.
Maybe,
but obviously going back to the Michael Keaton Batmobiles,
but I think
even
for that, for the Batman, I think his stuff is going to get more advanced, like as each movie goes on. Like
well,
I think
makes sense because again, it's Batman.
It's going to be a very what that is we're going to have like a very traditional. Like Batman,
right?
Because again, Batman lives in two worlds, and they don't really mesh well.
Right.
Justice League Batman does not mesh well, living simultaneously with like street level Gotham Batman,
right?
Because like he fluctuates in like how good he is, and like he goes from like beating like really like supernatural people of the Justice League to like letting Joker out of prison like every other week for good behavior. Like, it's just kind of what it is.
Escapes.
But like there's an aesthetic though that is and Batman's aesthetic is different. Like very different when he's in the Justice League, and he's almost like even used comedically.
Let's get back to the trailer.
League,
so Batman, obviously, we see Michael Keaton's Batman. He comes out, and now let's have and it's really cool. And he looks like the guy's 72, and so he's older now, obviously, because he hasn't been in the Batsuit since 1991 or whenever. 72, like
he doesn't look it.
He came out. Well, he looks. That's why it's funny now because we all think of Michael Keaton as an Oscar winner or an Oscar nominee for the movie where it's like Birdman and where it's kind of like he's a retired
because he was Batman.
He's obviously in Spider-Man movie. He's in a Spider-Man movie and he's Falcon and like he's been a tough guy in a bunch of movies.
He's Batman. He's Birdman. He's Vulture.
Birdman.
He's Vulture.
Well, it's funny because he's got this obsession with flying. But really, I mean, now we're getting this. And the funny thing about it is, I think they went back when they made this movie and. Because, again, Flashpoint, the Batman that the Flash runs into in the alternative timeline is not Bruce Wayne, but his father, Thomas Wayne, where his son got killed instead.
His son gets killed in the alley. There's a whole, like,
I'm sure there were pearls
Martha
bouncing
Wayne
around.
becomes, like, the Joker weirdly. Like,
it's like a weird thing.
But, he kills. He has, like, a really cool, like, red, like, detailing on his suit. Like, his, like, fucking, which is for, like, blood, basically. Like, his eyes are red, and, like, his tool belt's red. Like, it's a very, very, very cool suit.
But I think the smart, really cool take on this is why people want to see this movie is instead of it just being Thomas Wayne, we're just getting an alternate Earth alternate reality, but this is going to be the Michael Keaton universe Batman. And here's the main reason why. It's the same Batmobile, it's the same looking Batcave, but more importantly, it's the friggin' theme. They got that same theme. I forget I got to look it up. It's the guy who wrote the music. But dun, dun, dun. And again, it's such a good theme. Like people forgot how good that Batman theme is.
Danny Elfman.
It's such a good, and the aesthetic of that music is so good.
And it fits well, like in a modern, like it doesn't feel like out of place.
Think about all the shit we still do with Batman. I mean, in the movies, I don't care which Batman it is. There's always that friggin'
him in the
shot.
daylight was pretty cool too.
There's
like,
all that shit of him standing up on the top of a friggin' building. Yeah. And to be honest, we saw that in 1989, so they were ahead of their time. I know it's from the comics and blah blah blah, but he definitely all of the Batman movies, the incarnations,
like Michael Keaton's
they
Batman
are all
with Supergirl and like Flash specifically in that one scene where like Supergirl like pushes the guy away from him real quick and like just seeing him out on the open, and then the scene where he like puts the like fist down and Supergirl's just flying there. Yeah, which that's like a scene right out of the Flashpoint thing when she first gets into the sun anyway. I think we have a lot to look forward to with this. We're gonna be seeing this or opening day probably.
Yeah, we're gonna. I'm not waiting on this.
This one looks fucking.
This is not getting.
This looks
it's
really
not
good.
getting an Avatar 2 treatment.
So yeah, DC do have one winner out of these.
This is going to be a winner. It's not going to be as big as it should be, and that's fine. But I think enough people will be like, all right, okay, this is fine.
But they went all out though, and I think they realized they needed to go all out. To be fair, as Ezra is apparently getting the help they need.
Yeah.
They've still committed crimes, but maybe they should have been punished for. But I don't know. All we can do is hope that they actually take it seriously.
For him, his victims,
for them,
the people involved, all you can hope is that the circumstances are.
I don't think he's going
better.
to be flashed beyond this.
No,
I don't think they will be
there
flashed
are consequences
beyond this
for his
movie,
action, but he did this work prior. He wasn't hired after this happened. This movie was essentially shot before all that happened.
Yeah.
Any reshoots, I don't think they're even probably using him for reshoots. I think they're doing some other way around it. They're doing other footage, or I just don't think that he's on.
I'm
set
not sure if he did reshoots. He might have actually. I think he did actually, if I remember correctly. But
I mean, that's a whole nother thing. But all right, let's move on.
Either way,
let's move on.
Yeah,
Also,
we had a couple more trailers to talk about before we get to
also,
Last of
we
Us and all
have
that.
the Guardians 3 trailer. I think this is
I
think everything
sad.
in this trailer is a misdirect.
It's
Not
gonna be
everything,
sad.
but I think
Yeah,
a lot of it's a
this is
misdirect.
This trailer's good too. This
is a very good
music's
trailer.
good.
Yes.
Get your emotions going.
Yeah.
You just feel like
It's
the
got
way
the
it's
humor
the way
back,
it's edited. Yeah,
the
there's a
humor
lot
that
of
we're
humor
looking
to
for.
it. There's a lot of I don't know. It feels like it's tugging on your heartstrings the entire time. Just the way it's edited, just the music. The shot,
there's
the
the
dialogue of the
narration.
characters,
There's like a
the
narration.
images they're showing us.
Yeah.
So
It seems like we're getting a.
everyone looks really good.
A
in their
variety of
costumes,
things
so.
are going on in this movie. Clearly,
Yeah.
One of the things that's going on is that we're going to see an origin story for
Rocket.
Rocket, and I think also Groot.
I think Groot's just an alien thing. I think Groot's just an
With the
alien
one
thing
line
he found.
that Bradley Cooper's voices Rocket says is
You might find
he
maybe get to
liked,
see the
he
first
didn't
moment
like
today.
things the way they were, and he changes them. So he clearly the scientist that ever does whatever to Rocket.
No, he says he didn't he doesn't want to fix things or something. He just hated things the way they are or something.
Right.
Like something like that. It's a really good line actually. Like it's a really good piece of dialogue. It's like he
Right.
didn't want to fix things. He just hated things. I don't know, something weird like that. But
So
I know
clearly
I know what
he's
you're
a
talking about.
scientific experiment. I'm wondering if Groot was a scientific
I think
experiment
Groot's just
too.
from what we know, I think Groot's just an alien.
Okay.
I think, but I can see why you think, because he's like a living.
And that's
tree,
maybe how
but-
they're going to end up together.
But yeah,
because
yeah,
we
I'm not
don't
sure,
know
but-
how. I mean, I'm sure in the
Well,
comics
we see like that Otter, who's like a character
Yeah.
in the comics as
Right.
well, who's like a genetically. I think it's just more of like living, like actual
Right.
animals that he fucks with and
Right.
like does weird stuff too. Which almost seems like they're seeking that guy out. Which that's the guy who's playing the what's it called
the bad guy.
the
whatever.
bad guy. I forget what it's called. Like
Right.
the evolutionary, the high evolutionary. I think he's called.
Right.
He showed up at like Comic-Con and did was yelling at the crowd and shit,
Yeah.
like for the Guardians panel.
Oh, that's
It's also the guy who was like the butterfly dude
Okay.
from Peacemaker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's that guy. It's like the captain before he gets killed or whatever. So I'm good. So he's got another big role. Adam Warlock's also in this, who got teased at the end of the last
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
He looks
he's
pretty
in
good.
there.
Although he almost looks to be like the secondary villain, if that makes sense.
Warlock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Warlock he's not made by the Evolutionary, I don't think.
I think there's going to be a funny thing when we comes to the
So it's almost like
Warlock bit.
it's almost like it looks like they're seeking out the high evolutionary almost, to like something happens to Rocket maybe, or like he's
Right.
sick and they're trying to save him or whatever.
Right.
And they're almost like searching him out for both revenge and maybe to save Rocket.
Part of me feels like the whole Warlock
and then Warlock's
thing,
chasing them.
Yeah, or Warlock. The whole thing could be done in the first part of the movie. Like it could be like they're not going to waste too much time with the Warlock thing because it's like 10 years old now. I feel like the Warlock thing has been going on for a really long time.
I just feel like he'll be. I feel like he'll just be like the secondary guy who's like almost chasing them throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And then by the end, they
Supposedly Stallone is
almost
in
come to
this.
an understanding by the end, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
supposedly Stallone is back in this.
Yeah.
Obviously Craiglin we've seen in the trailer.
Yeah. The dog's back.
Dog's back. And obviously the subplot that we know is going on with this is that there's something going on where they're searching for Gamora. And obviously they find Gamora.
Searching for Gamora. If just like
Gamora's not with them at the end of
But
Thor.
I don't think there's.
When they leave at
because
Thor,
they're searching. I don't think
Right.
that's because I don't think they were going out to search for them though. I just think that Gamora isn't like she doesn't have any relation to any of them. Like it's
Well,
the other
Nebula.
universe. It's the other universe of Gamora. It's not even her Nebula. She
Right.
killed her Nebula.
Right.
Like literally, like in the land of that, she literally shot Nebula.
No, I get
like,
that. I saw the
so.
movie, so.
I
was there. I've
So I
seen it a
think like
couple
this.
times.
I think our idea is that Gamora is still like, yes, she's not like as evil as Thanos, but she was still like a herald of Thanos. She was
Well,
still
it's
like one
funny,
of her
and you
people.
brought this
she's
up.
she's not nearly as far along as like a
Right.
hero as the Guardians are. And they
Right.
at the end they have this thing where I don't know if this is like a joke, just a joke, or if this is like an actual like plot point they're like going with. But they have like the after they show the Marvel trailers love the after we show the logo joke,
Right.
You know, in the trailer,
Right.
And then for this one, it was like Gamora talking, and she's like saying like the girl you fell in love with sounds like her almost, and she like points to Nebula, and then it's.
And then Quill almost starts like.
And then Chris Pratt does like
becoming
an infatuated gaze. But I love Pratt as that character.
Yeah,
like,
he
he's
does
the only
that,
one
like-
that can play
he does
this
that,
character
like,
like the way like this.
He does that weird look.
And he's like, knock it off. And she's
Knock
like,
it off.
knock it off. He's like, I never noticed
like,
how
"You're
black
right, now
your
my-
eyes were. He's like,
black your eyes are.
my
My eyes
father
were
tortured
harvested."
me.
Yeah.
And like, and removed them. He's like, well, they picked a pretty set, which is like such a gun
It's
joke.
like
it's
such a
James
bad,
Gunn dark
such
joke.
a bad
like,
pickup line. And I think Karen
no,
Gillan.
but I think that might be
it's
like
funny because
I
we
love-
obviously we love Karen Gillan from
Yeah,
Doctor
we love
Who.
Dr. Karen Gillan, and she's really good in the
And,
role. Like,
and they've really allowed her to grow.
and she's
as an
very,
actress.
she's very, has to
in
be very
this role.
expressive too, 'cause she can't use her eyes. Like she
Right.
has these entirely blacked out eyes. So all the acting
Right.
she's doing is just with the rest of her face, which is like eyes are where like most of her performance is sold at the end of the day. Like that's
Right.
where humanity is, and like she's so like and. Not to mention, I think she's gotten better with each performance she's done as the character, like as well.
Yeah,
So,
like her original performances are kind of two-dimensional, and ever since,
yeah, this one will be her
ever
most like
since she
prominent
becomes more
performance
involved
now.
in the Infinity
Yeah.
War, Endgame movies.
And
we
even
get
then,
to
she's on
see
the
so
periphery.
much more.
Yeah.
Even her interactions with Rocket and Iron Man. I mean, I love those scenes where she's kind of like,
Yeah, but
she's
even-
kind of lost too. Like they're
Yeah.
all kind of lost during the.
But even
blip.
in those scenes, those are
Right.
still like some of the even for like Endgame and even for
Right.
like Guardians 2, where she has a bit more of a role than just being like
Right.
the bad guy's henchman. Like she's still of like periphery in a lot of these
Right.
movies. And this she's gonna be like more dead center finally. She's actually like full on member of the team, like full member of the squad, like kind of full billing, if you will. Like
So what else you got? What else you noticed in the trailer? Obviously, some
No, but I want to
banana-
talk about the thing where for that though, if we think that because again that Gamora, I don't think like I think maybe we thought like this story would be like maybe Quill winning over Gamora again,
Right.
But like, is it? Like, or because again they're in very different places and like
Right.
Because again this is that Gamora like. I feel like if we had that Gamora from the Thanos world from 2012 or whatever year she teleports in from, if she gets to like the place where our Gamora did with like going through all those things with our
Right.
Quill and like the Guardians, like I feel it almost feels cheap. It almost feels like it's not real to me.
Sure.
Like it's not the same Gamora. Like whereas like Nebula now is
Well, they
like
clearly have
like
almost
our
switched the
Gamora was
characters.
like
Right.
like never gave up on like our Nebula,
Right.
and eventually Nebula is now like the Gamora in this
If
trailer
that's
says
the switch
it
that
sounds
they're
more like
doing-
old Gamora.
Yeah.
So like if that's
Yeah.
the switch where like this Nebula has gone so far and become such a like almost a hero, like a part of the Guardians, like normal, because again she was so like because even in like the holiday special, this is that's the most normal in like a part of the group she's like ever felt. Like she feels embedded well
Right.
into the. She's still
Well, like the Christmas
awkward in
gift
her own
thing where
weird
you got the
Guardians
arm.
way.
She's got Bucky's arm.
Yeah,
And, like,
exactly.
you know.
And she has the weird dance he does, but that's just like the weirdness of her, like the awkwardness of like her character a little bit.
Right.
But she's trying to like fit in and like be a
Right.
part of the group, express herself better.
And
so I think that would be
it's
like an
if they do
interesting
that,
switch. Like
if they do that, I think it's such good writing to kind of do it. And I like what you said that it cheapens the relationship he had with Gamora because that Gamora is dead.
yeah, because
And-
Nebula is now to Gamora what Gamora was to Nebula in a way. That might be more of the relationship that's
It's an
more important
interesting
to this.
switch in the role reversal and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
And in that
obviously
case-
some other stuff is going on.
Yeah.
We obviously we know from the Christmas special that Drax and Mantis have a relationship now. I think we're going to explore
Wait,
that
are
a
they?
little bit.
I don't think so.
Clearly, they're in a
Well, not-
relationship.
Not in a romantic one, no. I don't
I
think, I don't
think
think
it
so
is.
in the slightest.
I think so. This
I
is
think-
the way.
I think that was
the way
just
they're
like a-
always fighting like an old married couple. In
I
a
just
Christmas
think that
special.
was just the two weird characters. Like, well, I viewed that as more of. I can see why you thought that, but I viewed that as more of Mantis being more expressive.
Right.
And because again, in the first couple of appearances we have Mantis,
Yeah,
especially Guardian, she's very shy, she's very reserved. I took that as almost, I think the main purpose of that episode, that little special we got, was literally to flesh out Mantis better as like an actual character who's now more confident.
Well, and they had
in herself,
two actors
who
that
argue
don't
back
require
at
any
Drax.
CG.
Because remember, Drax, exactly,
It was cheaper,
and they were
too.
probably not busy at the time as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So that's why they're in the majority of the scenes in that, because they were the most available, and they were the characters that Mantis needed the most development, if we're being honest, out of any of the Guardians.
Well, because
characters.
the storyline is Mantis is Quill's sister.
And they had the whole
and they
dynamic
wanted
with Ken
that.
Mantis
And Drax
being
is
Quill's
just funny,
sister.
so it's better to have
Yeah,
him in the
I like
Christmas
Drax's
show.
size now.
Yeah,
the
like-
trailer has a couple other nice things where like the Drax like in Quill back to back, like
Right.
shooting guns, and then Drax has like different branches and like 8 guns, like
Right. Oh,
throwing
no,
a General
Groot.
Grievous. No, then there's a
when
different one.
Groot
where
has like the
then there's a
27
different one where
guns at
Groot
one point.
Oh, Groot, that's what I mean. Yeah. Then there's another one where like Groot's where Rocket's on Groot's shoulder, like back in like the first movie again.
Right.
So
Well, Groot looks all buff now. Like
Yeah.
he started looking like that in the trailer. I mean, in the Christmas special. Now he's like not a withered old tree. He's a strong young tree. Like,
Yeah, he's all-
and I
he's
think that's the
bodybuilding.
difference between the
he looks
original
like Vin
Groot.
Diesel now.
What?
Looks like
Yeah,
Vin
he's,
Diesel.
Yeah, he's ripped.
He's like-
he's on roids, just
looks
like
like-
Vin Diesel in the Rock.
Yeah.
We're almost there. We can talk about that in a few moments. But obviously, there's a prison bit going on with this. I don't know if they're
Yeah, they're going
rescuing
back to a
someone
prison.
from prison.
Yeah.
We don't know if they get captured, which is fine. We can figure that out
Which
later.
even that, like, and that's the one sequence we see like, oh, that like Mantis and
My
Gamora are. No,
misdirect-
let me finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like the Mantis and Gamora are like holding like Drax up, and then like
Right.
Nebula is holding.
Carrying
bit my
him.
lip. Like Nebula is holding like
He's carrying them.
No, not that. I'm talking about in the prison. There's a different
okay.
shot where like both like Gamora and like Gamora and Mantis are holding Drax up for whatever reason,
Right.
and then like Quill is being held up by Nebula instead. So it's like, So I don't know. I think that might be a thread. That might be
think
more
that's a
than
cool
just a
thread.
joke.
I
I think it works. I think it's like a nice
Yeah.
thread. Like James Gunn doesn't like to keep character dynamics like the same.
Right.
His characters
Well,
change
let's jump
quite a
off
bit
for that
from each
because clearly we don't
episode,
know
so-
yet. But I think
Yeah.
But
this looks good though.
the
Like,
misdirect that I'm talking about is I think the misdirect is the fact
Death.
that who's going to die. Because if you watch the trailer, it looks like Drax and Quill are done.
Yeah.
You know, but it
and Rocket too. They imply
could be
might
Rocket. It could be
dying,
implied
too.
that Rocket too. They can't kill Groot again because they already did that.
Yeah,
Like
I
it
feel
almost
like it feels
they can't.
lazy.
So, and I just feel like
Gamora already died.
Yeah,
so you're not
I-
killing Gamora again.
I think they will not kill Rocket. I think Rocket's character.
I think Rocket's the misdirect. Yeah.
I think Rocket's a misdirect. And here's my thing about Rocket. If you think of character development within the MCU, I think you could argue that the Rocket character development rivals any other character development, top 2 or 3 character development. So I would love the fact that if the Guardians continue and whoever's left, I don't feel like they disband. Rocket goes on.
I can just see the Rocket because
Rocket
like, they
and
didn't
Groot
kill him
and
during
and,
like the
and
5 years.
Craiglin, because they're not going to kill Craiglin.
I almost wonder if like Rocket
and he's
said, like,
finally
the
going
end
to be
of
good
his-
at the whistle. Like, it'll come up at the right time.
I
He'll
almost
finally be
wonder
good
if-
with the whistle.
Is Rocket at the end of his lifespan though? Like maybe.
Well, that's
like,
why
could
they're going
that
to
be,
see
like,
the
could that be
evolutionary
like
dude.
it?
The-
Because he
the
says
high
like the first movie is
evolutionary.
like, hell, I don't got that long of a lifespan anyway. He says
We
in,
don't
like,
know
the first
that.
one.
Like, he
and again,
always
he
assumed
lived the
that.
5 years during. That's my fear. Is like
Yeah.
he's the only Guardian that didn't like die already.
Right.
Like already, besides like I guess Nebula.
Besides
but
Nebula.
like, but even then they killed the other Nebula. They killed the other Gamora. So like we're gonna kill the that version
Well,
of this one too.
I mean, it's kind of fun. I mean, I'm hoping they keep. And here's the reason.
I think Quill's
here's
done
my
after this
rationale
movie,
for
too,
keeping Rocket
so-
around. Here's my rationale for
Yeah.
keeping Rocket and Groot around. First of all, they're the 2 most beloved characters I think from Guardians.
Yeah,
and they
probably.
make
Quill's
the
pretty
most.
liked,
And
too,
here's
but-
the reason it's the most sense to keep them around. Because they're CGI characters, and you can continue to use them if you ever
And
want to
cosmic
use
shit,
them.
yeah.
And all you need is a voice actor. So Bradley Cooper can be 100 years old, and you can still have Rocket floating around if
Yeah.
you want to
Vin
have
Diesel
that
can
character.
always say, "I am Groot."
I'm really hoping on a selfish level that Rocket and Groot are still out
No,
there.
I'm hoping that
because-
Rocket's alive because Rocket's my favorite
because I'd
Guardian.
love
He's
to
one of
just
my
see,
favorite
like,
MCU
animated.
characters.
I'd love an
like-
animated series
Yeah.
someday in Marvel of just Rocket and Groot going around
No, I
causing
think Rocket
shit.
and Groot could probably
Like-
survive as its own franchise, like like
Yeah.
realistically, like it wouldn't be as big as Guardians, I don't think, but like it could probably realistically survive as like a TV show. If
And that's why I think
like,
it keeps listening to Stallone's in this movie.
I think Stallone is in. I don't know if he's in. He's probably not a major role, but he's probably in
but
it.
he's
Like he
gonna
was
be.
in the last one
Yeah.
for a bit, so why not?
So we got some cool stuff going on.
Yeah, so that looks good though. I think it might probably will be Gunn's last Marvel thing for a very long time.
He's too busy. He's
I
gonna
don't
have
think
other
again.
things
I
he
don't
has to
think
do.
I don't think Pratt's gonna want to do it very anymore. He's been
No,
doing it for
Pratt's-
10 years.
Pratt,
like,
I don't. I think you could. I think Quill could die.
I don't know if he'll die, but like he might go off with like whichever one of the people he ends up with or whatever at the end. I think that would be the.
I
the
think
proper
one or
end to
two
his
of them
character.
two of them have to die.
Maybe
It's probably
maybe
most
Mantis
likely.
or something.
It
I
could
don't
be.
know,
It could be Drax. I mean,
Drax is definitely dead.
think
I have no doubt that Drax is dead. Drax would be the easiest to like.
Right.
It would be very. That would tug at everyone's heartstrings because he's the
Well, there has to be that, or
and he's
there's
like,
no.
And
right.
then at the end of his arc is like he goes to be back with his like child and like wife again, who are Thanos killed. So it's like okay, and Thanos is dead. So his arc is basically if the Guardians are like breaking up, this is the last ride. Then like if his last thing is protecting this family, he gets to go be with his
All right.
original family.
Now let's
then
get
cool.
to the
Then
let's
you're
get to the best one, the only movie that
the
matters.
best one.
The Oscar winning. It's already been nominated
It's already
because
been
it's
nominated for
already
3
good. Just
Oscars.
because the trailer's so good.
It's getting 3 of
It's
the.
going to be a write-in
Yeah.
Oscar for
Listen,
this
there-
year's.
Listen, there are
forget
10
next
best,
year's
there are-
Oscar.
There are 10 Best Picture nominees. This is 3 of them.
This is
okay?
3 of them, and actor and actress.
Yeah.
He's been
All right,
nominated
just go.
in both
Just talk
categories.
About the damn movie already.
Yeah, he is.
We're already behind anyway.
Fast X10.
Fast X10. That's like,
The fastest 10 of them all.
The 10 of X.
It's the fastest
Yeah.
10.
Sure.
Fast X sounds like something you take when you have diarrhea, like Fast X.
Sure. Whatever you
You know,
say.
like Gas X, but it's Fast X.
Okay.
But anyway, that's what this movie is. It's diarrhea of action. That's what this movie is.
No, it's like the culmination, Dad, of
So,
years and years of,
I
of
think
carefully
Vin Diesel sits
of
around
carefully
and he thinks
crafted
this
lore.
is Endgame. This is
well,
his
that's what they're
Endgame.
treating it like. Yes,
So
that's exactly
my
what
question
they're
is,
treating
and
it
we don't
like.
know, and I haven't looked it up.
They're
and I-
unironically doing that. Yes, which
we're,
is great.
On purpose,
which is
we
perfect.
are not doing research on this information to find, because I thought originally that there were 2 parts of Fast and Furious left, and this is one of them.
Yeah, it's not. I didn't call it part 1 or nothing, so this might be it. This
But
could be
the
it,
trailer
Dad.
says the beginning of the end of the road or
Well, that
some
couldn't
crap
that just
like
be
that.
like the beginning of the, I don't know, man.
Yeah, so I think this, but we're not doing research on purpose because we want to be surprised.
Yeah, there's another
so
one I
except
want to know.
everybody's back except
Except the Rock.
except the Rock, which I
Yeah,
think,
literally, and they're all shown in this trailer. None of them get to be a surprise. None of them,
Yeah.
we get to show
That's
you,
why The
no
Rock-
matter how small they are,
Well,
we're not even going to let you be
I don't-
surprised by Helen Mirren's
I
character.
think they're
even
so
her
petty.
will not be a surprise.
yeah, I think they're so petty that we're not getting the Rock back.
No, that was. I asked you this after we watched this trailer the other day. I'm like, well, that's the thing now. Is The Rock in this? Or like because obviously like the rumors
Right.
and obviously I think most people are actually quite aware of the big Rock Vin Diesel like behind the scenes like beef like or like you know what I mean
Right.
animosity
The
towards one
off-screen
another.
beef.
Yeah.
Yes.
But now that like Black Adam is kind of like fucking flopped in that whole avenue is
Right.
now maybe he wants to get back into like the really big lucrative franchise that like was kind of the big first lucrative
Yeah, but this
franchise he
movie's
was in.
already
So,
done.
You can film
This
a cameo.
movie's mainly. That's
You
why.
could
Well,
film
my
it. It's
theory
like-
is if he is back, and
What's
I
what
don't
I'm
know if
saying?
he
Or
is.
they used it the entire time, and like and he is in this movie, and he's the only one that's hidden, and he
No.
is. The,
My
and they're
theory
using the
is-
fact that people
my-
know about the
my
beef.
Theory
That's
is,
a surprise.
My theory is that if this is not the last one and 11's the last one, that the last one's going to like that they're going to Barbossa him. Like in the very last scene when all the chips are down, there's going to be like a stairway. We're going to see some feet. And then here comes The Rock, just like Barbossa at the end of the second Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
No, because I think obviously that'd be great, but also like I think he'd be too like pet peeved by that. Like he'd be too like I can't let him finish out my movie.
No.
like I have to finish out my.
I think
movie.
maybe
Like,
this movie will be just a ripoff of Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, man, this
too.
movie's gonna be
Like,
great.
the-
You can tell by the trailer.
Vin Diesel's
like,
gonna up in hell,
they
and they're gonna have to
casted
take.
fucking what's her name?
They have to take
They
the Dodge
casted,
Charger.
Like, legendary actress like Maria Moreno. What's her name? Like
Rita Moreno.
Rita Moreno. I'm
Yeah.
like, what the? who's not been
Star
in any
of
of the
the
previous
last two
movies?
West Side
Who hasn't
Stories.
been in 9 of the previous movies?
She's in 2
but,
West
like,
Side Stories. That's how old she is.
Yes, I know.
She's
She also hasn't
the
been
greatest-
in not any of these movies
No.
at any point.
Well, I think she's supposed to be his grandma.
I fucking love
his great grandma.
No, real
She's
quick.
90.
I love how every villain in this is related to like a former villain from a different movie that we didn't know about until they made them up for the new one.
Are we supposed to believe that Jason Momoa
That's just so funny. That's
is
the
related
shit.
to the French dude from the other or whatever he's supposed to be?
Jason Momoa is, according to the trailer, which they like, because again they go back and show Fast Five.
They add a scene
which I do
where
like,
they steal the safe.
Which I do like that they yes, exactly. I do like that they realize that Fast 5 is their best movie, and that's the movie that they should take the nostalgia off of and they should use. So yes, I do like that. But they literally show like the scene of the fucking safe getting pulled away, and then they show a new shot of like the hole in the wall where the safe was, and Jason Momoa is just standing there, so implying that Jason Momoa was there, like back in 2011, like Jason Momoa was in that scene. We just didn't know the whole time, and then like also Jason Momoa was in the car that they hit with that Toretto hits with the safe. And then like goes and like kills like the older like gang boss, like, but instead he fell into the water below and he wakes up in the water, and that's the most Fast and Furious bullshit ever. That this character was here the entire time, and like okay, cool, fine, all right. So what? So he was the son of like a gangster in like Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Cool. All right, how did he get all the in the last 10 years he's acquired all the tech and shit that we need? Because like, is he going to? Because again, we've had that voice, remember, like from in the background of like that Hobbs and Shaw thing. I don't know if it was in anything else, but like, is that who that was? Like,
yes,
it was Khal Drogo. It was
yes, that's what
it was. Aquaman. Like,
it's Aquaman, dude. He looks like a pretty good bad guy.
But also,
I will say that he looks.
No, he looks good. Like a good bad guy.
When he's riding the motorcycle and he has a little magnetic bomb that he bounces and he goes boom and the car blows up. That's a pretty cool
franchise. Like, he's a perfect guy to bring into the whole dynamic. But also, like, Charlize Theron's been like in the last 2 or 3 of these things, and like they've been building her up for years. And like, oh, is she not the bad guy? Like for the culmination bad guy now? Like what? Like what? It was like we just get like one scene with like her fighting like pilot from Avatar. And what's her name? Michelle Rodriguez. That's funny. I don't know why that was the first role I thought of her as the pilot from Avatar.
That's pretty good. All right, what else in this trailer do you really like?
The Challenger can bend back into place. Like
so clearly it's everything in this trailer is ridiculous over the top.
The song that they use is like "Let's Ride."
Yeah, like there's so many. So there's what's his name?
I fucking love this.
The guy from Calvin and Hobbes is in this.
Yeah, Hobbes.
He's back.
And they use it as like they totally is like he gets revealed. Like
he's back, and he's with the guy he murdered.
Yeah,
he's got a team up.
That's good. That's funny.
With the guy he killed, which is gonna make for some fun scene.
I hope his brother back again.
Yeah.
Well, John Cena's
back. Everybody's back.
I hope Gal Gadot's back.
I think some other dead people are back.
Gal Gadot's definitely going to show up.
There's going to be lots of dead people back in this movie. Other people that have died that will return. It's going to be the snap. Like, he's going to snap his fingers and people are going to be back. This is his end game.
Yeah, sure.
This is Vin Diesel's end game.
He drops the God Challenger out of a plane and lands on a car.
So there's 2 things in this thing with the God Challenger that we have to discuss. So the God Challenger, first of all, immortal, helicopters pick it up.
Yeah, that's fine.
But somehow he pulls them back to the ground.
No, he's on a higher like
he's got the high ground.
He's on the thruway because again they love just filming these sequences on the thruways that all look the exact same.
Right.
So they have this thruway and then there's a high. It's one of those where it's like it's an overpass going over like another road.
Right.
So he drives off the one onto the lower one. So he pulls the 2 helicopters into each other, and then for some reason that they let go of the harpoon after that instead of just dragging him to the fiery grave.
So
I
think they get pulled together and
they crash.
They don't have time,
and he drives out away from the explosion.
They didn't have time. First of all, I don't think the physics of
I'm sure
the mass of that works.
You don't know.
I'm pretty sure that 2 helicopters.
You're not a physicist.
I don't think the weight of one Challenger could immediately pull those 2 helicopters together.
He put the NOS on though.
Reverse NOS.
He put the NOS on.
He's going to use reverse NOS to go back in time.
No.
That's how we're going to see the guy from 5.
That's 11.
That's how we're going
back.
The Rock
shows up in the TARDIS.
Yeah, he's got no, it's the Charger TARDIS. It's bigger on the inside. And that's really great. But then, more importantly, is the scene when he's like, somehow they're at Hoover Dam, and he shoots himself over the side of the dam and the gut. Well, the one shot it comes down on a throughway.
I will say,
in the trailer, it looks like the Charger breaks in half, but then it's fine right after that. But then there's another thing where he shoots over the side of Hoover Dam, and he's riding Hoover Dam down the side.
That's fine.
Which is
what's wrong with that?
Okay, I'm okay with the
world, Dad.
I'm okay with the going down the side.
Yeah, they have
Hoover
cartoon
Dam.
physics in Fast
but
and
at
Furious.
the bottom,
we've already
it's
established it.
It's not a slope.
No, it's a slope. It's a nice little like gradual decline.
It's like a Hot Wheels track from when you were kids.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's like a little wheel,
and it's gonna fly up in the air.
Yeah, exactly.
And somehow it's gonna end up.
I'm glad you get it
at the bottom of.
Yeah, I'm glad you finally understand.
Oscar.
I will say there are some good trailers.
Two
There's
words.
some good action in this.
This looks like a great movie.
There's a little thing
you-
where where a
if
motorcycle
you're-
does a little juke
Yes.
over like a
Yeah.
little bump or something, or like a railing. Or I don't even know. But anyway, it's filmed good. I don't. A lot of these characters look like they're showing up for like one scene.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because we only see John Cena in the car.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
What do you
Like,
want
he's
to
not
do,
in any
man?
other scenes.
What do you want to
Like,
do?
it's-
I think it's going to be literally
Like,
like Endgame, where like characters just show up at the last
Yeah, like,
minute
they're
for
only
the
gonna
big
be in,
fight
like, for a
scene.
single scene
They're
to help
only gonna
out,
show
and then
up.
they're gone.
They're
Like-
all going to show up for one scene,
Yeah,
and
like,
then
that's it. Like-
then there's going to be like a team up moment when it's all the women from the Fast and Furious franchise are all in cars together,
Sure, yeah.
and then there's a race. When do you think the race is going to be? At the very end? Is it going to be like?
I don't know, man.
Enough people have died.
see, the
Let's
cat-
street race one last time and I'll kill whoever wins lives, and the other person has to commit suicide or something like. I don't know, like because it seems like the race. It seems like the big race at the end is gonna be for all the marbles, man. It's gonna be for all the marbles.
I don't think the plot line of Fast and Furious is gonna be.
It's gonna end with a stupid race.
It's gonna end with a suicide.
Yes.
Do you think it's gonna be like you
Jason
lose,
Momoa was
you
like,
have to-
"Fine,
you have
I'm going to agree to
execute
this.
yourself."
You have to execute yourself instead of pink slips. It's gunshots to the
But yeah,
head.
we got who else we got on this? We got
Because too many people have died, man.
little nobodies in this
Family.
apparently.
Little nobody.
With Scott Eastwood's
I
back.
I didn't realize Scott Eastwood was in. Oh, he's the federal guy, right?
Michael Brooker, really?
Yep.
Didn't see him. Brie Larson,
Brie Larson
Charlize Theron,
playing. She's playing Captain Marvel.
Alan
in this film.
Richardson. Who the
Okay,
fuck is
this is great.
This is all great. This
All
is
right.
all good stuff.
Can we move on, please?
This is a buy.
I can't wait for it.
I know. We're watching it open tonight.
We're gonna go see it at the so. Also coming out, there was an indie trailer. Nothing really new. You said you got mad because Indiana Jones jumped out of a plane. You didn't like that. You said.
Yeah, it was a little much.
I like the humor of it though. What are
was
you
fine. It was
doing
fine
here?
otherwise, yeah.
I'm here to rescue you. And then there's
I
an
don't
extra
mind
line
that.
from Sala. Go get him, Indiana Jones.
I like Sala.
I mean, because at Sala, I think the actors they don't want to have two 90-year-old guys running around in this
Yeah,
movie.
so like, all right, let's get him in a scene. We're just getting him in a
So-
scene. It's like, I don't know. It's fine. It looks good. I'm pretty confident in it. You know, like
the de-aging looks really cool. They really did a really good job because they de-aged him and the other guy, Viggo Mortensen or whatever the other guy. Whoever, it's like, are you still a Nazi? So I love the Nazi stuff is back. I think it's just a nice combination of. They literally were pulling footage from. I saw Harrison Ford on a thing where he's being interviewed, and they do the dots in the face thing, and he was trying to describe the technology. But they have, for him, created this whole database of all the work that he did in that time frame. So it's funny because he did a movie. He did two movies after the first Star Wars movies. There's a movie called Hanover Street, which is a crappy love story, but I really like the movie. It's a good movie. And then there's another movie called Force 10 from Navarone, which is a sequel to Guns of Navarone. But obviously all the actors from that movie were too old. So in that movie, you have Harrison Ford playing an American pilot and the guy from Jaws taking over a role from the original movie, and they have to go off and do this mission. That's a World War II movie. So we have a lot of really cool footage of footage from the late 80s of Harrison Ford, which they're able to use, that are from like 78, 79, 80, 81, like that time period of Indiana Harrison Ford's life. And they're able to use all that footage to reconstruct a lot of this facial stuff that they're doing. Yeah. So it's not just that crappy stuff they did for that movie where they made Al Pacino's face look like whatever. Not Al Pacino, but what's that one movie where they just basically de-aged everybody, but makes them look like just fat versions of them. Yeah, The Irishman, where they didn't look young, they looked like fat versions of themselves because they just pooped up their face and smoothed it out.
Yeah, they just aged them down to like. I hate.
This is a much better technique of de-aging.
We're probably being like a little bit harsh on like The Irishman, but like. The Irishman.
I'm not harsh on the movie. I'm harsh on the de-aging.
No, but
because it doesn't. It looks wrong.
No, but even like de-aging stuff. But I think they approached it with the wrong. Well, first off, it was weird that like they had made that. It was another one of Netflix's amazing business decisions. Because again, Netflix did not make the money back on that movie. Like I don't care. Like they just didn't. Like there's no way. And like the gimmick of that movie was like the face technology, right? And like Marvel did it. Like that's a dude right there who would never give Marvel credit for anything and would probably like talk shit about Marvel's movies. Not that I think Marvel's movies are better than like Scorsese's shit, but like for that though, like you literally we had seen that before. Right. Like there was other de-aging tech that maybe was using different techniques, but that looked better than like what he did. Because again, he had actors that had been actors for their entire lives that people had seen 20, 30 years ago. Acting
and that's why it looked so hard.
Didn't look like
it looked wrong, and it was hard to believe.
They looked like a person of that age that they were looking
but fat.
But
their faces look puffy.
Yeah, they
because
still look
they
like
smoothed out wrinkles, and they don't. Their technology doesn't like. Your face looks different when you're older, so they did some kind of thing to like spread out the wrinkles or whatever.
Whereas
the heck
there's
been
multiple Marvel guys.
Whereas
there's been Marvel stuff, which they have a completely different technique. But like think about
which the Marvel technique is how they're using Harrison Ford.
And this was even further back too. I'm talking about think about like Kurt Russell in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 at the beginning of that movie. Like he looks perfectly like Kurt Russell from like the 80s. Like
it's
pretty good.
Very good.
Like, he looks closer to himself than like
I watched a little bit about how they did the ones for that. And what they did in that one is they did a lot with makeup and prosthetics. And then they just fixed it with very minimal CGI, where the Netflix movie, The Irishman, is heavily CGI. So, and again, who cares? It's the beginning of that technology. My point is the Indiana Jones stuff looks pretty darn good.
Yeah, this works in the way the Marvel stuff works, where it's more like, oh, this is the younger version of that.
We didn't get anything new in that trailer, but
not really.
It's just something to be more excited about.
Yeah.
Another reason, because I think it's another 120 days or whatever it is till it comes out. Also coming out this week is Ant-Man.
Not the best reviews at the moment, but it's what it is.
It is. Is there just this Marvel hate now?
I don't know, because the critics like even when people say Marvel hate, the fans have been more negative on.
But are these fan reviews or critic reviews?
These are critic reviews. So I'm saying like these are critic reviews thus far. The fans haven't seen it yet. The critics are usually, even for like the Phase 4 stuff that like fans have turned more negative on. Like most of the Phase 4 stuff has been reviewed pretty positively by critics overall. Like not like beaming. But like they're not rotten to say, like they're in the 80s, 90s, like the typical Marvel thing.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, right now its rating is a 6.7, which I don't know how they get that.
Don't look at the IMDb.
IMDb
is too early.
And the critic reviews is a Metascore of 50.
Yeah. So I don't know. Obviously this is a very different type of Ant-Man movie.
Right.
Like they're playing it up to be more of like an Avengers level thing, and apparently it does do a lot to set up Phase 5, and like there's a lot of interconnectivity with this movie, which I will say good. Like that's good. Like there was almost none of that in Phase 4. Right. So like if this movie, irregardless of like, and this is a little bit dumb, but this is kind of how I think of Marvel movies. Like I don't always like judge Marvel movies, just like. As individually by like the merits of just the movie, but like how it's like working as like part of a bigger unit. If this movie manages to do Kang justice, like if Jonathan Majors is good, which luckily like is the only consistent thing from all the reviews, is that Jonathan Majors as Kang is good, which I don't think anyone like doubted that was going to happen. Like Jonathan Majors is like one of the best actors in Hollywood these days.
Right.
So as long as he's done justice, and as long as there's some interconnectivity, and I get like a direction, like the start of a larger plot for Phase 5, and for like this phase at all, like this larger era of the MCU, I will probably walk away being happy from it. I do think there's going to be a bit of like although the Ant-Man movies are not the most popular or like notable franchise within the MCU, like they have their fans and they have like a very specific aesthetic that I think fans like when like every once in a while as like the palate cleanser. And I know that like he even said like the Peyton Reed, who I actually like Peyton Reed as a director like quite a bit. He's done some Mandalorian stuff as well. Like he said he didn't want to be just like the palate cleanser again. He didn't want to be like the side dish. Like he wanted to do like a bigger event in like this. And I think that like they probably moved too far away from the character. Like and probably the tones of the previous films, if I had to guess.
But
like
he can't
I imagine
just be the
not
goofy dude forever.
True, but but again, I'm going to see like
he's been through too much.
No, I'm fine with that, but I don't think.
You know,
but I think the movie's going to literally. But that's the thing. There's almost this idea of, like, not that it's bad, but that there's like and this is what happens with I think a lot of what Phase 4 is, where it's like, there's like the movie itself and the premise isn't bad, but there's just so much more they could have done, and there's like with certain concepts is what.
Well,
I've
let's
heard
wait and see when we see.
So we're gonna see it this week.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Couple days, maybe.
And Picard comes out Friday as well.
Yeah.
They announced that Lasso's coming back on March 15th, which is I know that we don't talk about on this podcast, but Zach's excited about. I am about Ted Lasso. We'll have a lot to do on Wednesdays because we'll be watching what comes out on Wednesdays. Bad Batch, but then Bad Batch goes right into what? Mandalorian.
Bad Batch is going to overlap with Mandalorian for a while,
right?
Yeah, or at least a few weeks.
So we got Mando coming up, but obviously the things we watched in the last 2 weeks that are big are the latest from Last of Us, but also Bad Batch had a 2-story arc, which was very good.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that first? Really, quick?
Actually, these are both kind of 2-story arcs. Honestly, for both shows.
Yeah.
We'll do Bad Batch really quickly
because we never get to. We really haven't talked about Bad Batch as much as we can. We always seem to cut it off.
Bad
Batch
at the was end. Like this season in general has been like a little bit slow up until that point. But we did with these 2 episodes. We finally kind of addressed like the overall like the clones, what's going on with the clones, like this sort of idea. In the first episode, we don't even get any of the Bad Batch at all. It's just like an episode where we're on Coruscant.
Well, that's the clone conspiracy.
Yeah, the clone conspiracy, and
where it starts in that bar that we've seen.
Yeah, we've seen that clone bar before, and we mostly follow like a clone called like Slip, who was on Admiral Rampart's Venator, like Star Destroyer, the ones that destroyed Kamino at the end of last season of Bad Batch. And like there's 2 clones talking. One of them is. And one of them saying like he's gonna like basically blow the whistle, like he's going to
Ramparts.
He's going to tell them that like Kamino wasn't. And the Empire's lying. Rampart's
Well,
lying.
there's a cover
that the
story.
Kamino was destroyed by a storm, which is like
on a planet that they've survived storms for forever, right?
But obviously the Empire was just killed the Kamino as they blew up the facilities. But anyway, we have a senator who's actually like all the way back from like the first season of the Clone Wars, Ryo Chuchi. Same voice actor and everything, who they bring back, and she actually wants to be like the voice of the clones. They're in the Senate, and it's like this is a big couple politics based episode.
I really like. Let me just kind of comment on that. Let me comment really quick on the concept of what they're doing here. Is I really do like that. This concept that we've talked about this before is that we're looking at these clones. They've served the Empire. They've served the Republic. And now we're throwing them away. And obviously that is a thing that we've talked about in our country as well as other countries. Yeah. What do you do with soldiers when you're done with them? There's even like stories on Next Generation, Star Trek, where they ran across a race of people that basically put all their genetically engineered soldiers in jail. After a war because they didn't know what to do with them, and then Picard has to become an advocate for them. You know, and I love this storyline that these clones were created as disposable people, and now they don't know what to do with them.
And now the Empire's trying to dispose of them.
And now,
just like the Jedi,
like finally, some people are recognizing
they're getting Jedi'd.
Yes.
like the clones which did Order 66 are now having their own version, and this went away.
Well, they're all struggling. It seems like a lot of them are struggling with what they did.
Well, yeah, that as well, but also like. For like the big, some of them,
which is an important story arc for people in general that are in the military.
That, Rex is obviously like helping certain clones escape, and obviously
we already had Cody's already go AWOL.
Left and gone AWOL. So more, and Rex says at one point in this episode, more and more brothers are waking up to what's been done to them. So like there's yes. Like,
Well, even what Fives went through on the original.
So many clones are probably what happened to like those 2 clones that blew up Kamino, which is again the home, and like even through Clone Wars, in the original Clone Wars like show, we see multiple. There's an invasion of Kamino during that, and there's multiple times when clones refer to Kamino as their home planet. They care for Kamino weirdly, and notice it's like kind of cold place, and clones don't really even care for Kaminoans that well, because they're like. Because Kaminoans don't really treat clones as human. But there's even a neat
line like that was our home. Those people like there's a line in the episode.
What's her name says that?
Where like
Omega.
Yeah, like Omega says that, and
in the second one. But they're fighting what they're arguing about in the Senate though is whether or not, and this is how the clone stuff gets brought up, is they're arguing whether or not it's time to commission a army of conscripted or of modern imperial citizens who choose to serve by their own merit, which is like the start, otherwise known as like the start of the imperial military, like the stormtrooper program.
Right.
And then even the part of the thing that I always talk about, which is like the Empire slowly. And I do like what I like most about this arc is that the Empire is already in full swing. Obviously, the Senate's still around at this point, but the Emperor is not just like a full-on authoritarian who makes every decision by himself, and then the Senate's just there for
he
show.
Still has the
the Senate is still making
Senate
decisions that are important, and they still have the last say per se in a lot of things. Like his voice is obviously very influential. Obviously when he shows up, the vote goes in his way. But But the first vote fails. He obviously.
Well, it's been tabled a couple times.
Yeah, it's been tabled many times, and it still is never passed. Even though it's a thing that the Emperor we know in the background obviously wants to be passed.
Right.
So, and it's a whole part of this, the overall scheme of these 2 episodes. Again, Chuchi eventually comes to learn of the conspiracy of Kamino, that Kamino was destroyed by Rampart, and Rampart's the one who's trying to introduce this Stormtrooper program, have it approved by the Senate. That leads to the whole thing where she tries to track down Slip, who told her about it. He wants him to testify. Slip's the clone. That clone is killed by another weird angle of this episode is we have a weird sniper character, which I think they do a good job of. I think at first they want you to think it's Crosshair, but it's not, obviously. And it's just a clone, but it's had its markings, its number code removed weirdly, which is not a thing that we knew they could do. So, and weirdly, clones aren't really supposed to shoot at other clones and stuff like that. So either way, he was an assassin.
Soldiers follow
orders.
He
was doing something outside the operations of a typical clone troopers
for sure.
Operation. You know what I mean? He was doing specifically for. Well, actually, we don't even know if he was specific. I guess we know he was working for.
Well, we're assuming he's working for Rampart.
Yeah, and then even at the end of the episode, when Rex is trying to get some information out of him, he almost makes it seem like he has a completely different viewpoint, and he says the word he's a believer, almost like that one character from that Mando episode, which I don't know if that was a reference to that or not.
So the second episode, they finally Rex has to bring in the Bad Batch
for the
because
next episode.
they need to go they need to help the senator, and they're going to go to. They're going to go to Rampart's ship. So
and get the
Slip
log,
had left a log in the computer. So we see kind of a decommissioned Venator class Star Destroyer that was the one that attacked Kamino, and that they're fixing it. And that's a whole really, really good sequence where they have to sneak in and try not to kill other clones, and they use their little blue blaster things that they do, their little stun weapons. And I don't know, I thought that was really when where the thing picks up, and Omega's got a kind
of was pretty good. I liked Omega following Chuchi around.
That was a really cool thing.
They meet up with the other they meet up with the other Kaminoan who we've met before in previous Clone Wars episodes as well.
Yeah, kind of the senator that kind of got kicked
corrupt
out.
Senator from Camp
but
Kamino.
she's alive.
But she's alive still, because she wasn't on Kamino at any point. I think she might have even been on house arrest or something. But she obviously has some idea of some of the more nefarious stuff of what's going on behind the scenes with it, and she's willing to testify to what's going on. But it's only after she kind of hears from Omega. And she realizes Omega's a clone, which they don't really. I don't know. It was a little dumb for Omega to go to the heart of the belly of the beast.
Well, she even says I'm a clone too, which is weird. That that whole that reveal could have been dangerous.
Yeah,
for
that's
her.
what I'm saying. Yeah.
But it's kind of important to the story because
she almost convinces her, and she almost gets her mad or worked up like she is. She almost sees the kid being mad, and Kaminoan's oh fuck yeah, I should be mad. They killed my people.
Well, I think that's why it's important because she actually has very fond memories of growing up on Kamino and the people that like raised her and stuff. So I think that was pretty
And
cool.
she cares for other clones. Like
Second
Omega's
episode's really cool because
Yeah.
they're doing all this, they're doing all this, they're doing all this. They get
They get it. They
do everything they were
the mission
supposed
goes
to
well,
do.
and the Bad Batch's missions often like don't go well and they fail. But they get it done. They get the evidence, and I'm like, there's no way they're gonna show the Senate what actually happened like this early on in the Empire. Like the Empire can't figure out that they're genociding people like this early, can they? And they do. And then like, oh shit!
They show it to
and they
the
show
Senate.
the video, and it's in the middle of the big like iconic Senate building room, and you're like, oh fuck! And then like
And
everyone's
this is
arguing,
great.
and everyone's just arguing. You just hear like voices and like murmurs going on all across the room, and then you just hear like an alarm go off. It's like, "Durr, durr." It's like, and you know the second the alarm goes off, it's like, fuck, it's Palpatine, and you're like,
and he rises up.
and he rises up, and
in
you're
his
like,
little thing.
and he looks great. He looks the
Yep.
best model they've
And
ever had for Palpatine.
and it's Ian, what's his name?
And it's the actual like voice actor, live
From the
action
movies.
actor
Yep.
doing the voice, and
Yep.
which is perfect too, because like this is a pivotal moment in galactic
Yes.
history that they're showing. It's like the first mention ever of like the Stormtrooper program, and like the passing of that program, like the passing of the guard from like at least in legislation from clone to Stormtrooper.
What
And he
is
does this
great
big
is
speech,
that they
and he
all,
twists it
yeah.
like he throws Rampart completely under the bus, like, and has him arrested by clones like right there and then. And then like does this whole speech where he's like disturbed, but then like he like plucks out like a little thing to help him to get what he wants, which is like, I can't believe that the clones would just like it would follow these orders so such blindness. It's like it troubles me. It gives me pause, and I'm like, and then so he uses that the clones like followed these horrific orders, destroyed their own planet, like even though like they were ordered to, which is like what they're bred to do. They're bred to follow orders, like.
Right.
And like we saw with the two clones that wanted to like blow the whistle or wanted to tell, like they were horrified by what they did. They were like haunted by blowing up their home, like their people, like their.
Well, and then what's the sad part
brothers,
is that they get through this, and obviously then the
so
Senate
he twists it, and then
he twists it, and the Senate either votes or he just declares it
Yeah, and he votes.
that we're going to create the Stormtrooper army
So
now.
it's almost their fault, like in a way.
In a sense,
Like, he
they
feeds
actually
he
were
used them,
right.
like. I don't know if you know he was using them specifically,
Well, and that's
but
kind
he
of
used
the
his enemies
conversation.
to like get his what he
Well,
wanted.
when
like,
they're about to leave Coruscant, that's when they have the conversation that we were manipulated again.
And I love the Omega line.
And-
Actually, it's like,
and-
but we told the truth. Like, and this is like a real life thing. It's like a totally real life related. Like, but we told the truth, and like we were honest. And it's like, and he twisted it
It's
to his
two
advantage.
things. And
Like,
it's two things. Let me take it for a second. It's two things here. It's the reality
Yeah.
of that the truth does not always set you free.
yeah, exactly. Like
that the truth is manipulated for
a big lesson for Omega.
And more
Like-
importantly, I mean, they could have just yada yada'd it and said, well, we can't have the Emperor find out that he's corrupt. Like, we can't have that happen. Obviously, that can't happen. But they did it, and the writing's so good that they were able to take, which we know has to happen, that eventually Stormtroopers eventually replace clones.
And honestly, it
so
takes
they
a
did it.
fairly-
Hold on, let me
Oh,
finish.
yes, yes.
So they do what they have to do, but now we know how it was done, because we always kind of thought we knew, but we didn't actually see it. And now, ironically, the Bad Batch was manipulated again, and it leads to, obviously, the big thing that happens, which is what?
But real quick, I want to say a last thing. I think it takes also like a rather incompetent character, or not incompetent, but he's not the most like competent like Imperial we've met by any
Rampart.
means.
Yeah, he wasn't super evil,
And, like,
comparatively.
he was never really even like likable as like a character,
Right.
like today, even as like an Imperial like officer, like in a way that we like them on occasion. But I think that also now can be almost like on purpose. Like they picked somebody who was a little incompetent, a little insecure, a person who would go through with a command like that.
Right.
So they had someone like that to throw under the bus, like all along. So if that was like the idea, like that, like they almost had like he was fodder, he wasn't important,
Right.
he was easily sacrificable, like as a asset.
And he's going to die before he gets to prison.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
And
we'll
then that
never
leads-
see him again, but
yeah.
he's going to die.
And that leads, and also that's the idea where I think he's the only one that knows the Batch are alive, I guess, within the Empire,
Which is kinda cool.
So then maybe they're going to interrogate that out of him or something, but we'll see.
I think he's going to get killed.
But yeah,
before that
last
even
thing though
happens.
is Echo, part of the Bad Batch, obviously leaves or stays with Rex instead of leaving with the Batch at the end, which I don't know, I'm mixed on this.
It's not like he's not going to be back.
Well, I don't know, just like I mean, not necessarily, but I think more importantly is just like Echo is not always like highlighted on the show anyway.
Right.
So like not having him around like is like okay, so like we're not even gonna get like Because again, on many occasions, Echo is just like Echo and Tech do the same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Like
I agree
where
with
they
that.
don't do enough to differentiate them.
Right.
And then sometimes I'm like, okay, well he was an ARC trooper. Then maybe he should be like Hunter's like next. He should be the next in combat. And then they didn't do that nearly as much because they would use Wrecker as like the other combat guy like a lot more with Hunter. Right. So like he oftentimes gets just kind of left by the wayside.
Well, they've been building this up.
His main plot though is like his main character trait has been like he's been frustrated and he wants to help clones.
Right.
Which I think has been good and I think fits his character. He's a reg, obviously. He's not like he joined them only after everything that happened to him with the Separatists. But he said like even in this movie, like at that point, this is where I felt that I was the most help. And now Echo feels that he will be the most help just to the society,
and he's back with Rex.
To his brothers, with then. And I will say this, like, yes, I will say, like, it's bad that now, like, okay, now we don't get, like, any more character development with Echo because he's not here as much. But at the same time, maybe we'll get some character development from Omega and the rest of the batch now that he's gone. Maybe, like, his absence will learn. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes the absence of a character can reveal feelings as much as, like,
let me kind of go through some
there.
things which I think are important. Because he's back with Rex. We're clearly going to get more character development. We're going to see Cody again.
And I say, if we get one episode, if we get a single episode, though, and this is to your point that he's back with Rex, like, if we get even one episode, which is based on, like, that, with, like, him and Rex doing shit, like a Crosshair type episode, but with Echo and Rex, worth it. Doesn't matter. Right. Like, then it's totally worth it. But if we don't,
it's not about the Bad Batch. It's about where the whole show is going.
I mean, he's still a member of the Bad Batch,
yes.
so he can.
So
if we
the
do
Bad
Crosser
Batch
episodes, we
it's not
certainly
just
should
about
be able to
four
do
guys on
Echo
a ship.
episodes.
It's about where the show what the show is trying to do, and the show is more about this post, Order 66, what happens to the clones.
And Rex is like
it's an analogy
for
for all the wars that our own military goes through. And there's a whole and there's also setting up what happens with the Empire and all that. So clearly we're going to get some stuff with Cody. I think we're going to ultimately get to a point where even Crosshair, I'm right off the bat, at some point Crosshair is going to realize he's been manipulated too. Even if it's just out of freaking anger, he's going to be mad. It's not even going to be like, oh yeah, you guys were right all along. It's going to be more out of just like he gets screwed and he's done. Where they're going to set him up to be murdered or set up for something, and he's going to get away. Like
he was
something's
to
coming.
Rampart too, like
right.
Rampart's
yes.
not in
so
place
now
anymore,
he doesn't have anybody. He's going to have to be kind of on the run now too because he was working for Rampart, so to speak. Like
so we'll see what happens to him.
So
in that
we're going to see that.
Now,
we're going to see that, and. This last episode,
like he
episode
might be treated with suspicion because he's an elite clone working
under
Rampart.
Episode 8's got some really cool moments in it. So there's a lot of people that I think there's a lot of people that find Omega annoying. I really like Omega because she humanizes the Bad Batch in a way, her connections, and we've talked about this before. But in this episode, there's some things that really stand out with me with Omega. First of all, she fights when she has to.
Yeah.
Second of all, when they first get to Coruscant, like they do some really cool stuff when they're flying through Coruscant, and we see her expression of being in Coruscant. Yeah. So she sees the beauty of Coruscant, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I like seeing like Omega seeing shit. Like occasionally she can be she's the kid character. Occasionally she's going to be like annoying.
But she's growing up, and she's quite often the humanity. Like we're seeing the Empire through her eyes as the viewer.
Ahsoka was annoying almost on purpose as well.
Let me finish. So then also, obviously, this is we were talking about when she's in the Senate, but also that scene at the end when Echo has to tell her why he's leaving, and I think it is affecting Omega because she's going to say. Echo, because she wants to do more too.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to allow her to push Hunter and, we need to not just be hanging out with Sid. We need to be doing more. And I think that's going to be, we're going to see the growth of that in, I don't know how many seasons of Bad Batch there are. Yeah. I feel like there's at least one more.
Probably.
And then I think we're clearly going to, I don't know, I like where they're going with Omega. And I don't like little kids on shows. I hate little kids on shows. But in terms of little kids on shows, I think this is a good development in terms of how she's growing up. So
yeah, I think it's bad when we get like Omega like filler episodes. Like those ones are typically like a bit like annoying. But I think like typically when we have like an actual story that's important, like particularly like the end of last season or like obviously these are 2 episodes. Like I think Omega actually usually adds to it, like with the humanity thing, like you said, or with like being exposed to something new. But yeah, I agree. Like again, back on the right track with the season.
I wasn't worried about. I didn't think
none of the season's been bad,
Yeah,
but it was good that we've gotten more filler than
Right.
than like actual like moving the forward things. Because again, Bad Batch is a little weird because it is like a sequel successor series to Clone Wars in a way, but it's not nearly as broad of a show.
Right.
So so I think people are still like adjusting to this idea that it follows just like one group of people. And yes, Clone Wars mainly follows just like Ahsoka.
Well, they couldn't call it Clone Wars because the Clone Wars is over.
Yeah.
So what do you call this?
But
so you call it Bad Batch.
Well, you've been watching Clone Wars. Like every arc like bounces around to like new characters.
Sure.
Like it's a very different type
Sure.
of like yes, our animation style is the same, the stories are very similar. But we're sticking around more. So like with Clone Wars in the past, like when you did like those side episodes that were a little bit more fillery, they were fine because usually you had different characters from last episode, from last arc. Or like you don't get that nearly as much.
Before we move on for this,
then we'll do
talk about Last of Us for just 2 minutes because we're really kind of over.
Yeah, we're going.
But the thing I'll mention is I didn't see the second Jar Jar episode because I fell asleep because I don't need to see Jar Jar making out with the giant chicken. I just don't need it. I know it's important.
You're watching season 6.
I'm watching season 6, and your reaction when I realized that Jar Jar is back. I mean, there should have been a Reacts channel for that because I'm like, oh, really? And I mean, I hate Jar Jar just because it's so. It's just.
But him and Windu, didn't you want that team up, man? Isn't that the team
up you've always been dreaming for? That's when I think did I turn it off or did I just fall asleep?
I fell asleep too. So
I don't know. It's been a rough week, but I just wasn't ready for that. So Last of Us, episode 5, we got a really, again, just another great episode. This episode was called based on from the comic book that they have access to in the Endure and Survive. There's a comic book in there, and that's like the line from the comic book.
That's from the game, too.
There's so much in this episode, I don't even know if we can talk about it, except to say that we saw a great pairing of Joel and Ellie with this Henry and his little brother Sam.
They're obviously supposed to they're supposed to relate, to be like a mirror to like Joel and Ellie in a way.
But more importantly, before we do anything else.
Here, turn the camera off, man. I'm fixing my hair.
Sorry. The only thing I want to say about anything else in this episode is it's an amazing episode, and I hate little kids in shows.
Really good.
But this actor who plays Sam, they did something that I saw that after the episode, the thing they talk about after the episode, they decided to make this character Sam deaf.
Yeah, well, they switched from the game. I'll explain the game.
But let me give you my perspective on it.
After you go through your thing, I'll explain the change.
We can just talk about what a great episode is. I don't need you to break down the episode.
I just want to do the change really quickly.
Let me just say, like, the fact, from my perspective, not knowing anything about the game, and that's always the funny analysis that we have here, is I never played the game. I don't know anything about the game. I'm just watching it like a show that I know nothing about. And to have the storytelling, the genius of the storytelling of Lamar Johnson, the actor playing Henry, having to protect Sam, his little brother, who is somehow surviving in this world, and he's deaf because he has this protector, this big brother. And the fact they went out and got a deaf actor to play it. And they said that the way this kid was on the set, that everybody on the set, the crew, the actors were learning to sign, and they were learning how to read, like all this cool stuff that happened, which just makes the show so good.
I was listening to it was like the after the episode thing, and we were listening to it, and we were both just smiling, listening to them.
It was just
like the set and the crew and the cast of this like series on top of just how good it is, just make this so even like better to watch.
It makes you want to work on a show like that and root for this show.
Root for the show. It makes you enjoy watching it even more. It makes you want to like moments that are good even better because you know the people behind it are want it to be good and put so much effort into it. But yeah, and then obviously the end of their story is like devastating, and again that's obviously a repeated thing, like where most characters in this that you meet do not end up with happy endings, and they get more and more devastating. Like what's more devastating? Is this more devastating to you than Frank and